The sky hasn't held its blue in decades. Now it burns in shades of amber and ash, a constant glare that sets the horizon ablaze, even at what should be evening. The sun, once a comforting glow, hangs swollen and angry, a constant reminder that the world we knew has been reduced to a slow, grinding collapse. Mountains crumble into dust as if time itself has given up, their peaks once proud now jagged and fragile. Rivers, once arteries of life, lie cracked and hollow, the soil beneath them a brittle skeleton. The wind carries ash, dust, and whispers of forgotten places, rattling through the skeletal frames of abandoned buildings that used to house the pulse of civilization. The streets of cities are no longer streets. They are deserts of concrete shards and rusted metal. Skyscrapers lean precariously, some collapsed entirely, exposing hollow interiors where families once lived and worked. Cars, half buried in dust, sit like tombstones along highways that lead nowhere. Bridges twist like broken bones over dry rivers. Former landmarks, the proud symbols of human achievement, have been reduced to shards of memory, their shapes recognizable only in faint silhouettes against the fiery sky. The smell of decay is constant, a mixture of dust, scorched earth, and the faint rot of what humanity left behind. Water is the first casualty, and with it, life has fractured. Reservoirs are dry basins, cracked and sun-baked. Lakes have receded into pale outlines of themselves, and the few remaining pools are murky, stagnant, and fiercely guarded. Rain is a myth told in stories. Clouds form rarely, and when they do, they bring acid instead of life. Forests that once breathed oxygen into the cities now lie charred, skeletal trunks standing like witnesses to a fire that never relents. Wildfires consume what little remains, leaping across abandoned towns as though the land itself is enraged at the folly of humanity. Society, as it was, no longer exists. Governments collapsed under the weight of famine, fires, and flood, leaving a void filled with scavengers and opportunists. Survivor groups form temporary alliances, only to dissolve when hunger strikes or fear rises. Some wander alone, shadows in the dust, clutching weapons and memories alike. Factions with strange hierarchies roam the roads, raiding what little remains of settlements and leaving nothing but broken shelters and corpses in their wake. Libraries lie in ruins, their books crumbled to dust. Hospitals, once havens, are nothing more than empty shells echoing with forgotten cries. The hum of power is gone. Generators sputter and die, leaving cities in silence. Electricity has become legend, yet there are traces of stubborn life. A patch of green here, a spring-fed puddle there, a small garden hidden under a collapsed building's shadow, proof that some still cling to existence. People adapt. They move quietly, carefully rationing what little they have. Some have returned to primitive methods, digging wells, collecting rainwater when it comes, hunting small, elusive prey. Others trade in old knowledge, in salvaged technology that still hums faintly with energy, fragments of the world that was. These small acts of survival are both a defiance and a lament, proof that humanity is not yet finished, even if the world is. The air carries tension, a nervous anticipation that anything could happen at any moment. Dust storms sweep across valleys, swallowing the remnants of towns whole. Fires rage over hills, spreading unpredictably. And always the sun glares down like a merciless eye, burning what little hope may linger. Silence stretches between storms and disasters, but it is not peace. It is waiting. Waiting for the next wave of destruction, the next collapse, the next test of resilience. It is a world where memory and imagination are equally vital. Survivors navigate this shattered landscape with a map of ghosts, the outlines of roads, buildings, and landmarks remembered from photographs or stories. Civilization is a patchwork, held together by scraps of knowledge, fragile alliances, and stubborn hope. Fear and caution govern every step, yet within that fear, there is a glimmer of something more. A desire to endure, to leave a mark, to survive despite the certainty that the world as it once was will never return. In the distance, mountains crumble, dust spiraling into the sky like smoke from an endless fire. The air shimmers with heat and loss. The world is broken, yes, but it is not yet dead. Somewhere hidden in the ruins, humans continue to move, breathe, and struggle. And though the remnants of civilization cling by a thread, that thread is still enough to pull someone forward, one cautious, uncertain step at a time. I am Miles Harrington, though in this broken world, names feel fragile, like dust slipping through your fingers. I used to have more than just a name. I had a family. I had a home. I had a city humming with life and commerce and the ordinary chaos that now seems like a dream. That world is gone. Now, my existence is measured in radio signals, the hum of my pedal generator, and the brittle echo of my own thoughts. Survival is a constant calculus, a ledger that never balances. Each day I wake and check my stores, cans of water, dried grains, a handful of protein bars scavenged from the ruins of a supermarket long stripped bare. I've learned to ration, to prioritize. Water comes first, food second, firewood or fuel third. Shelter is ever shifting. Today it may be the hollowed shell of a gas station, tomorrow the basement of a collapsed apartment building. I've slept beneath the skeletal beams of a library once grand, its walls lined with dust and the faded, torn pages of books no one reads anymore. Every place carries a memory, a warning, a lesson in caution. The radio is my lifeline, not because it connects me to others, though sometimes it does, but because it gives my mind purpose. I broadcast small observations, weather warnings, and whatever scraps of news I can gather. Sometimes I speak into the static just to hear my own voice, to remind myself that I am still here, that the act of being heard, even by no one, is an act of defiance against oblivion. There's a rhythm to it. Crank the generator, tune the frequency, speak, listen, repeat. In those moments I am not just surviving, I am asserting existence. But survival is lonely. Most people I knew are gone. My wife, Claire, died in the first months after the flood swept the city streets, carrying away homes, memories, and people alike. My daughter, Lily, was too small to understand, and she was lost the same night, snatched by chaos I could not fight. I remember the scream, the rush of water, the hollow feeling in my chest as I searched for hours I would never get back. Those losses are a shadow I carry with me. They sit beside me as I scavenge, as I sleep, as I broadcast. They remind me of what has been taken, but also of what is worth clinging to, even if it is just a thread. Each day is a negotiation with death. I have learned to read the skies, to smell the wind for the scent of wildfire or the hint of an approaching dust storm. I move quietly through the ruins, avoiding rogue bands that stalk the broken highways. There are those who thrive in the chaos, who have surrendered morality to necessity, and I avoid them when I can. But sometimes encounters are unavoidable. I have traded with strangers who appeared as ghosts in the dust, bottles of water for canned food, a rusted knife for a blanket. Trust is a currency more valuable than gold and twice as fragile. I keep tools meticulously cleaned and sharpened. My pack carries the essentials: a canteen, a small medical kit, matches, a multi-tool, a notebook with weather logs, and the faint hope of a compass pointing somewhere meaningful. I have become part scientist, part scavenger, part storyteller. Knowledge is survival. Knowing the patterns of the wind, the slow decay of the rivers, the locations of still usable water sources, these things keep me alive. I track them obsessively, scribbling notes in my notebook, drawing rough maps, recording observations in the radio log. Without it, the world would swallow me whole. Hope is what drives me, though I cannot call it pure. It is a fragile, flickering thing. Sometimes, I imagine finding another survivor community, a place where people still share meals and stories and laughter that is not swallowed by fear. Other times hope is smaller, finding an unspoiled can of food, a patch of fresh water, a safe place to sleep through the night. It is enough sometimes just to see the sun, or what remains of it, burn across the horizon without a storm swallowing it. Memories haunt me, both cruel and sustaining. I remember Lily laughing in the park, Claire's hand in mine, the ordinary sounds of a morning commute. They are gone, yet in remembering, I feel a strange comfort. I live for them now in a way I never did before, by keeping my mind sharp, my body moving, and my spirit unwilling to surrender completely. To forget would be to die twice. Yet there is anger, too, quiet, simmering. Anger at the world for collapsing, at humanity for ignoring warnings, at myself for failing to protect the ones I loved. But anger must be contained. It is a fuel I cannot afford to burn recklessly. I channel it into vigilance, into observation, into keeping the radio broadcast alive, into marking a path through ruins where someone else might one day follow. I have learned that solitude is both a curse and a teacher. Nights are long and the silence can crush. I speak aloud to no one but the empty air, narrating small observations. The way dust swirls in a shaft of light, the distant crack of collapsing buildings, the hiss of the wind over broken concrete. Sometimes I imagine someone listening, somewhere, waiting for my words to reach them. Even if no one is there, the act of speaking keeps me tethered to the concept of humanity. There are moments when despair grips me, when the wind carries a new threat, when a fire sweeps through a valley I had hoped to scavenge, when the generator sputters and dies, leaving me in unbroken silence. In those moments, I remind myself that I have survived worse, that I have seen worse, that I have endured. Survival is not heroism, it is repetition. It is doing the next thing, the thing that keeps breathing possible. And sometimes, in the rare quiet, I let myself hope that a patch of green is just beyond the next ridge, that a well-stocked cellar lies hidden in the ruins, that another human voice might respond to the static. Hope is dangerous. It can lure you into reckless action, but it is also a tether, a line to something beyond mere existence. It is the reason I pedal the generator, speak into the microphone, and continue walking through ruins that could swallow me whole. I am Miles Harrington, survivor and storyteller. I have nothing left but the radio, my knowledge, and my memories. Yet in that, there is purpose. I have learned that survival is not measured in days or in resources. It is measured in the small choices to keep moving, to keep speaking, to keep observing, and to cling to that flickering spark of hope even as the mountains crumble to dust around me. Because if I stop, the world does not just move on, it forgets, and I refuse to be forgotten. This section builds a deeply personal, reflective, and resilient protagonist while weaving in survival tactics, emotional depth, and a sense of a fractured, dangerous world. The drought is absolute, the kind of drought that swallows hope whole, that cracks rivers and lakes until they are nothing but pale scars on the earth. I've been keeping careful records in my notebook, temperature readings, barometric pressure, the faint trickle of water from the last functioning spring I found months ago. The numbers tell a story as stark as any disaster report I used to read. Temperatures have risen an average of 7 degrees Celsius above historical norms. Precipitation has dropped to a fraction of what it once was. Groundwater levels are plunging faster than aquifers can replenish. The Missouri River, a lifeline for the Midwest, is now a sun-scorched trench, hollowed out and silent. Its banks are lined with the remnants of what used to be fishing boats, dock pylons leaning like broken fingers, a skeletal monument to civilization's failure. Survival is becoming harder with every passing day. The meager stores I once relied on are dwindling. My cans of food are down to the last handful, grains rattling like bones in a tin. Water is rationed to a few sips at a time, collected from puddles that remain after a rare, fleeting rainfall. Fuel for the generator is gone. I rely now on pedaling by hand. my legs burning as I keep the frequency alive. Every day brings the threat of running out entirely, of being left with nothing but dust and silence. Encounters with other survivors are rare but dangerous. Some are desperate, their humanity corroded by hunger and fear. A small group approached me one evening, faces hidden behind scarves and soot. They demanded water and food, weapons in hand, but there was negotiation too, a wary exchange. I traded the last 2 cans of beans for a half-empty water bottle and directions to a partially intact reservoir. Even alliances are fragile. Trust is a currency too expensive to afford in this world. Sometimes survival means turning your back on someone who could otherwise be a friend, because caution is all you have. The weather has become a weapon itself. Dust storms rise like walls, swallowing the remnants of towns in swirling clouds of grit. Visibility drops to 0, and every inhalation carries a cough of grit and despair. Fire follows close behind. Wildfires rage with unholy speed, leaping across valleys and devouring forests that once provided shelter and oxygen. The heat is relentless, searing skin even under multiple layers of cloth. There is no predictable pattern. A storm may vanish without warning, leaving the sun's fury unchecked for days, then return with sudden, acidic rain that eats through metal, wood, and flesh alike. I've learned to read the sky, to smell the wind, to judge by subtle shifts in temperature, but it is never enough. Nature has become volatile beyond calculation. The environment itself is a graveyard. Trees are blackened skeletons, rivers are cracked clay, cities are a jigsaw of collapsed buildings and rusted vehicles. Wildlife has vanished or turned hostile. Small prey is scarce, and predators, wolves, feral dogs, even mutated rodents, have adapted to prey upon humans when other food is gone. Even insects, once abundant, now bite with ferocity as they fight over dwindling resources. Every step outside is a negotiation with death. Science is the only tool I have to understand what is happening, even as knowledge feels futile against the scale of destruction. Global temperatures have shifted atmospheric currents, destabilizing the jet stream and creating static weather patterns. Moisture no longer reaches the interior valleys. Evaporation exceeds precipitation by orders of magnitude. Once stable aquifers have shrunk below usable levels. Rivers that fed farmland now vanish before they reach irrigation channels. Every calculation points toward further decline. I speak into the radio sometimes, sharing these observations, not because anyone is listening, but because writing the numbers down keeps my mind sharp, keeps me tethered to the world as it used to be. Food scarcity is relentless. I scavenge wherever I can. Abandoned homes, collapsed supermarkets, ruined warehouses. Even canned goods are rare now. I've learned to store seeds and cultivate tiny plots in hidden pockets of soil, but sunlight is inconsistent, rainfall unpredictable. Every crop is a gamble, every meal a negotiation between hope and necessity. Water scarcity governs everything. A single misstep, a contaminated puddle, a dried-up spring, can mean death within days. I treat every sip like a sacred ritual. Fuel is equally precious. My generator runs on salvaged gasoline, each ounce rationed meticulously. Without it, communication ceases and I am isolated. I can pedal, yes, but the generator hums far longer on chemical energy than my legs could ever sustain. Every mile traveled, every distance crossed on foot or bike, is measured against the risk of exposure and the depletion of energy reserves. Survival demands calculation, vigilance, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. The crisis is compounded by the collapse of society. With governments gone, law is absent. Survivor factions control patches of territory, sometimes violently. Raiders strike with precision, scavenging, killing, and moving on before help or retaliation can arrive. Communities that once shared resources now hoard, defend, and attack. Food is currency. Water is treasure. Trust is a weapon. Any encounter outside your chosen path is fraught with peril. Alliances, when they exist, are temporary and often unreliable. Still, there are moments of human ingenuity. I've seen survivors rig solar stills, distill water, and collect dew from steel beams. Some have constructed makeshift wind turbines from salvaged materials. Knowledge is survival. Observing, adapting, and improvising is the only way forward. Even in the ruins, the human mind can create microcosms of hope, and I cling to those examples as proof that not everything is lost. The psychological toll is immense. Fear is constant. Sleep is broken by nightmares and the groans of shifting ruins. Loneliness presses in, a weight that rivals thirst and hunger. Each day, I face not only the external threat of the dying world, but the internal erosion of my own sanity. Maintaining mental focus is survival in itself. I talk to the air, to the static, to memories of my family. Each word spoken, each observation noted, is a lifeline back to humanity. Everyday survival becomes more precarious. The heat is unrelenting. Fires encroach. Dust storms sweep away the fragile shelters, and water disappears faster than I can find it. Food grows scarcer, resources dwindle, and the world itself seems intent on erasing every trace of human existence. Every day is a gamble, every step outside a risk, every encounter a potential threat. And yet, I move forward. Because survival is not just instinct, it is purpose, calculation, and stubborn hope. I calculate, ration, observe, and adapt. I share what I can over the radio. I carry my memories, my tools, and the faint glimmer of hope that somewhere, beyond the crumbling mountains and scorched valleys, life persists. That is the crisis I face every day. A world in freefall, humans scattered and fractured, resources vanishing, and the climate itself turned against us. And yet I endure, I broadcast, I survive. Because if I do not, then all that remains is dust, and the mountains, as always, will continue to crumble. The air is thick with dust, clinging to my lungs like a warning I cannot ignore. Every breath is measured, every step calculated, every sound filtered through the constant hum of alertness. The drought has worsened, the rivers have vanished entirely, and the last reservoirs I found months ago are now reduced to cracked basins of earth and clay. My water stores are at their lowest, a few precious liters in a canteen that rattles with every step. Hunger gnaws at my stomach, dulls my thoughts, and makes every decision heavier, more dangerous. Even the simplest tasks, collecting firewood, scavenging for canned food, walking from one safe zone to another, are now exercises in endurance, patience, and luck. It is not just the environment I fear, it is the people who remain. Desperation has made some ruthless. Raiders prowl the roads, shadowy figures with makeshift armor and scavenged weapons, moving like predators through the ruins. I have seen what they leave behind. Burned out shelters, bodies left to rot in the sun, supplies stolen and destroyed. Avoidance is often my only option, though sometimes confrontation is unavoidable. I carry a knife, a crowbar, and a rifle I salvaged months ago. They are heavy, cumbersome, and yet essential, for the act of survival is as much about being prepared for violence as it is about finding water or food. Rumors have begun to surface, fragmented, whispered over radio frequencies, half-believed signals intercepted in the static. There is talk of a valley, hidden beyond the crumbling mountains to the north, where a spring still flows, where water can be gathered in quantity. Some speak of a functioning generator, a micro-community that has managed to survive by strict rationing and shared labor. I am torn. The human part of me clings to the idea of hope, of connection, of a future that is more than survival day by day. But the rational part, the survivor, the scientist, the realist, warns me that these are likely traps, illusions born from desperation, or worse, lies to draw the unwary into ambush. Yet hope is dangerous but necessary. I find myself studying maps and satellite images scavenged from old equipment, marking potential routes and safe zones. I cross-reference the accounts I hear with my own observations of wind patterns, rainfall, and the slow movement of clouds. The drought has created predictable patterns in some areas. Wind-driven dust storms sweep certain valleys at regular intervals, and I have learned to navigate around them. Still, every journey carries the risk of exposure, heat stroke, dehydration, or an encounter with those who would take everything from me without hesitation. The scarcity of resources has turned mundane survival into a delicate choreography. Water is everything. I have learned to distill it from dew collected overnight, to purify puddles with makeshift filters, to ration it with the precision of a scientist. Food requires scouting, foraging, and sometimes bargaining with others who are just as desperate. Fuel for the generator is a relic. Every ounce of gasoline is precious, rationed with an almost obsessive attention. My legs keep the generator alive when fuel is gone, but the effort is exhausting, and sometimes I wake with a soreness that reminds me of my mortality. I encounter survivors, some seeking alliance, some seeking to exploit weakness. A small band once approached me in the ruins of a former grocery store. Their leader, a wiry man with eyes too sharp and calculating, offered a trade. Food for information about nearby water sources. I weighed the offer carefully. Giving away knowledge could mean death, yet turning them away might provoke violence. I chose compromise, enough to gain some trust without revealing the locations of my most vital caches. Trust is always a balance, a measured risk that could tip in either direction at any moment. The environment itself conspires against me. Dust storms sweep across the plains, reducing visibility to near zero, filling every crevice of my clothing and equipment. I have learned to shelter in abandoned buildings, to seal myself from the grit, to wait out the storms in silence. But storms are unpredictable, and sometimes they strike without warning. One morning I awoke to find a narrow storm slicing through the valley, and I barely had time to take cover. The air burned with sand and ash. The sound of the wind was a constant, terrifying roar. My lungs screamed, my eyes stung, but I survived, though just barely. Each encounter with the storm leaves me weaker, more aware of the precariousness of my existence. It is during one of these periods of forced rest that I first hear the full story of the Northern Valley from a stranger on an abandoned radio frequency. The voice is distorted, crackling through the static, hesitant yet persistent. They speak of fresh water, arable soil, and a small enclave of survivors who have managed to stabilize themselves through cooperation and ingenuity. The description is detailed enough to tempt belief, yet vague enough to set off every warning in my mind. I spend days cross-referencing landmarks, scanning satellite images I salvaged months ago, and attempting to triangulate the location. Each day the rumor gnaws at me like hunger. Each day the drought tightens its grip, forcing me to consider whether the journey is worth the risk, or a trap that could end everything. Fuel, food, and water are running lower than ever. I ration carefully, but even the most disciplined methods cannot prevent the creeping fatigue, the faint tremors in my hands, or the dull ache in my legs from long marches across cracked earth and collapsed buildings. My backpack is light, but every ounce counts. Each additional can of water is precious, each scrap of food meticulously measured. I track my supply carefully, calculating the number of days until the next source of sustenance must be found. Even minor miscalculations could be fatal. And then there is the internal struggle. The hope of finding the Northern Valley is intoxicating. I imagine people who smile without fear, food cooked over safe fires, water clear and plentiful. I imagine communication networks revived, knowledge preserved, and a life that is more than scavenging and survival. Yet my mind constantly battles with reason. The journey is long, the terrain unpredictable, raiders and hostile survivors are everywhere, and the environment itself is unforgiving. Every decision must balance hope against survival, a constant mental strain that is as exhausting as any physical trial. Encounters with other humans become tests of judgment and nerve. I pass a small group hiding in the ruins of a collapsed bridge. They watch me with suspicion, armed and silent. A gesture, a nod, and the faintest sign of offering trade, perhaps a ration of water or food. But it is impossible to know whether their intention is genuine or deceptive. I have learned to read body language, to observe posture and hesitation, to measure trust in fractions of a second. Even so, there are no guarantees. Every step is a gamble. The environment pushes me further. Dust storms arrive with increasing frequency, fires rage across abandoned forests, and the sun blazes with relentless heat. Temperatures have climbed to levels once thought uninhabitable. Even shaded areas offer little relief. I keep a careful log of weather patterns, temperature shifts, and wind direction, hoping to predict disasters before they strike. My survival depends on both instinct and meticulous observation. Failure in either could be fatal. Still, the promise of the Northern Valley drives me. It is a fragile, flickering hope, but it is enough to keep me moving, pedaling the generator, rationing every ounce of water, scanning the ruins for food. It is a goal, a reason to endure, a line stretching just beyond the horizon. Every day I weigh the risk, the potential for life versus the certainty of suffering, the chance for survival against the possibility of death. And yet, despite everything, I continue forward. In the quiet moments, I reflect on why I move at all. It is not just hope, not just survival. It is memory, it is defiance. It is the human instinct to keep going even when all evidence suggests the world is finished. The Northern Valley may exist, or it may be a myth, a cruel tease whispered across static airwaves. But the act of pursuing it keeps me alive. It gives purpose to the exhaustion, meaning to the rationed water, and courage to face the dust storms, fires, and raiders that mark every mile of my journey. Even as resources dwindle, as storms grow fiercer, as the world itself seems intent on erasing me, I cling to the possibility that there is something beyond this desolation, a place where life persists, where cooperation and ingenuity have carved out a fragile oasis. And it is that possibility, that myth, that uncertainty, which pushes me forward across cracked highways, through collapsed towns, and into the unknown, one cautious, aching step at a time. Because in this world of dust, fire, and relentless heat, hope is both a risk and a necessity. And I cannot afford to surrender it, not yet. You're listening to the last voice on the dial. The storm's coming closer, and if you're out there, hold on to something solid, because this might be the moment everything changes or ends. The air shifted first, not just a breeze or the usual grit rolling off the cracked earth, but a weight pressing down on the lungs, like the whole sky decided it had had enough of floating above us and wanted to come crashing down. I knew it before I saw it. I could feel it. A storm. Not the scattered dust squalls that sting the skin, but a full wall of fury, black and writhing, miles across, rolling with its own gravity. I've seen storms before, seen them rip apart outposts, tear steel roofs clean off bunkers, choke entire groups of survivors in the space of an hour. But this one was different, bigger, hungrier. The horizon had disappeared behind a curtain of moving black. The earth itself seemed to moan beneath it, trembling as the storm devoured the landscape, swallowing dead trees and skeletal ruins like a tide swallowing driftwood. And me, I was standing on the edge of it, clinging to a radio mast with one hand, my pack with the other, wondering if I should run, or if I should stay and see if this storm was the reckoning we all knew was coming. Resources were gone. The last canteen was bone dry 2 days ago. My hands shook from dehydration, my mouth tasted like copper, and every step sent my head ringing with hollow pain. I wasn't alone either. 3 survivors had been with me earlier this week. 2 fell behind after the raider ambush near the overpass. The kind of men who hunt not for food, but for cruelty. I never saw them again. Just heard the echoes of their screams fade under the hiss of gunfire. The last one, Elias, had followed me until yesterday. His hope broke before his body did. He said he'd heard whispers of clean wells beneath the ruins of the old refinery to the east. Said he'd rather chase a rumor than die beside me waiting for rain that would never come. He walked off without another word. I didn't follow. I couldn't decide if that was mercy or cowardice. Now it's just me, alone with the storm, alone with the static. But here's the thing, before Elias left, he said something else. Something I can't shake, he said. There's a place north of here, not just a rumor this time, a real place. They've got water, food, tech that works. They're pulling people in, a sanctuary. I didn't believe him. How could I? Every story like that is a trap, bait for the desperate. You follow the promise of salvation, and you find a bandit camp waiting with knives and empty smiles. But now, standing here with the storm chewing up the horizon, I wonder, what if it's true? What if there is a sanctuary out there, hidden behind the wasteland's lies? What if all of this, all the hunger, the running, the loss, was leading me to that one fragile chance? The storm screamed, a low howl that rattled through the steel of the mast. I pressed the mic button on the radio and spoke, voice cracking like the air itself. If anyone can hear this, the sky's coming down. Looks like the end of everything. If you've got a plan, if you've got someplace real, speak now. This is the last call. Static. A hiss, broken by faint whispers of nothing. Then, just as I was about to let go, something answered. Not clear words, but a pulse. A repeating signal, faint but deliberate. A beacon. It was coming from the north. My heart hammered. I didn't trust it, not yet. But it was something. Something more than silence. And here's the cruel trick of survival. Even the smallest spark of hope burns hotter than fear. I couldn't turn away from it, so I made the choice. I'd run toward it. Toward the storm, toward the signal, toward whatever truth waited beyond the wall of black. The ground shook as I moved, every step sinking into dust that wanted to swallow me whole. The storm's front hit like a living thing. Sand, ash, debris whipping across my face, clawing at my skin until it bled. I wrapped my scarf tight, ducked low, and pressed forward. Couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The world was reduced to shades of black and gray, the horizon gone, time itself unmoored. Somewhere in the storm I heard voices, familiar ones. Elias calling my name. The two who'd fallen behind screaming again, their cries swallowed by wind. My own guilt thrown back at me on the gusts. I knew they weren't real. Didn't matter. They still cut deeper than the grit in my skin. Halfway through the storm, I stumbled. The mast I'd left behind was gone, erased. My body ached, lungs clawing for air, eyes burning from the sand. My legs screamed at me to stop, to just give up. And for a moment, I almost did. Almost sank into the dust, let the storm bury me alongside everything else that had fallen. But then through the chaos, I heard it again. The pulse, stronger this time, not just noise, a rhythm, a heartbeat, the beacon, the sanctuary. I pushed on. Don't ask me how long it took, minutes, hours, maybe days. Time isn't real in the storm. But eventually, through the blur of black and red, I saw light. Not lightning, not fire, something steady, artificial. A tower, small, cracked, but glowing, and at its base structures, real ones. Reinforced, shielded against the elements. The faint glimmer of moving shapes inside, not shadows but people. I collapsed at the edge of it, face pressed into the dust, lungs screaming with every ragged breath. But I'd made it. The signal wasn't a lie. The sanctuary was real. Now, as I lie here with my back against the wall of something built to last, I don't know what comes next. Will they open their gates? Will they let me in or turn me away? Will I find water or just another illusion? But the storm hasn't reached them yet. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I feel something close to hope. You're listening to a voice that shouldn't still exist. If you're out there, if you're still breathing, don't let the storm bury you. Keep moving. Keep searching. Sometimes the lies turn out to be true. Sometimes the static hides a signal. Sometimes the end of everything is just the beginning of something else. The storm didn't just pass, it carved itself into the bones of the world. The land is different now, almost unrecognizable, though maybe it's me who's changed the most. When the winds finally died, they left silence so heavy it pressed against my ears like water. I'd expected more destruction, more ruin, like the storm would tear away the last shreds of civilization. But instead it stripped the world bare. It didn't destroy as much as it revealed. The old city ruins I used as landmarks are buried now under dunes of ash and grit, reshaped into jagged silhouettes that barely resemble the buildings they once were. The radio tower, my tower, still stands but crooked like a tired old man leaning on a cane. The generator clung to life, sputtering, coughing smoke, but somehow, miraculously, it still hums. I should be dead. Anyone with sense would have been dead if they stayed where I did. But maybe sense isn't what's kept me alive this long. Maybe it's stubbornness. Or maybe it's that tiny sliver of hope I can't seem to shake loose, no matter how much the world tries to grind it out of me. The storm took almost all my supplies. The little food I had tucked away is spoiled, soaked through with grit and chemical dust. My water cache cracked during the quake that came with the storm, bleeding itself dry into the thirsty earth. What I have left is barely enough for a few days. And yet, I'm still standing. I've come to realize survival isn't about what you keep. It's about what you can endure losing. I've lost so much already. Family, friends, strangers I used to hear on this frequency, even pieces of myself. And still, I wake up each morning and breathe in the dust-choked air, lungs burning, and I keep going. But the storm did more than strip away the land. It stripped away the illusions. For weeks, months maybe, I've chased the whispers of something better, a hidden water source, a community to the north, a way out of this endless collapse. I used to wonder if those stories were just survival's last cruel joke, dangling hope in front of us like a mirage. But when the storm rolled over me, black and infinite, I saw what it meant to cling to those rumors. They kept my legs moving when everything else told me to stop. Hope might not be real, but the act of hoping, that's real enough. When I staggered out after the storm, I found something unexpected. The ground, peeled back by the winds, had revealed an old riverbed, one I'd never seen before, buried deep under layers of collapse. It's nothing but cracked earth now, a long scar carved into the landscape, but I can smell it. Moisture. Deep beneath the dirt, beneath the years of ruin, something stirs. I dropped to my knees, pressing my palms into the fissures, and for a heartbeat I swore I felt it. A faint tremor, a pulse. Water still there, hiding, like the planet itself refusing to give up entirely. That discovery nearly broke me in a way starvation never could, because it meant the stories weren't all lies. Somewhere beneath the ruin, life still lingers. And maybe, just maybe, there's more of it out there. But survival doesn't belong to me alone. I've seen them, silhouettes on the horizon, ragged figures moving in broken lines. Raiders, desperate people, survivors who have traded kindness for hunger. The storm scattered them too, but not enough. 2 nights ago, they came close. I could hear their voices in the dark, carrying through the still air like whispers. They were searching, scavenging, desperate enough to kill. I stayed silent, radio off. No fire, just darkness and my own shallow breath. And in that silence, something ugly boiled in me. I realized I wasn't just afraid of them finding me. I was afraid of what I'd do if they did. Would I fight, kill, steal to protect what little I had? The thought sickened me. And yet deep inside, another voice whispered, "If you want to live, you will." This is the part I didn't want to admit, not into the microphone, not even to myself. Survival changes you. It asks you questions you never thought you'd face, and it demands answers in blood. Since the storm, I've been thinking a lot about who I was before all this. Back when water ran clear from a faucet, when lights came on at the flick of a switch, when we trusted strangers because there wasn't always a knife hiding behind their smile. I think about that person and wonder if they'd recognize me now, or if they'd turn away disgusted. But here's the truth. I don't want to be who I was before, That person was blind, fragile, dependent on a world that could vanish in an instant. The storm taught me something. The old world isn't coming back. Not ever. But maybe that's not entirely a loss. Because what we build from here, it doesn't have to repeat the mistakes of before. So here I am, broadcasting again. Not because I believe someone's out there listening, though maybe you are, but because speaking into this mic reminds me I'm not alone. Words carry weight, even if no one hears them. They tether me to something bigger than myself. I want to believe this storm wasn't the end. I want to believe it was the turning point. If you're listening, if you're out there, don't stop. Don't stop moving. Don't stop searching. Don't stop hoping. The world may be cracked and poisoned, but beneath it something still breathes. The earth isn't finished with us yet. Every night since the storm, I've stood at the edge of that dry riverbed, staring down into its fractured mouth. I imagine water rising again, slow and patient, carving its way back to the surface. I imagine the sound of it, the rush, the bubbling, the life. And I imagine faces I'll never see again. Faces of those who didn't make it. People who once laughed, sang, cursed, and lived beside me. They're gone. But maybe, through me, through these words, they're not forgotten. Survival isn't just about keeping your body alive. It's about carrying the memory of what was, so when something new grows in its place, it remembers what came before. The storm cleared the sky too. For the first time in months, I can see stars again. At night, when the winds calm and the silence settles, I lie on my back and watch them. Cold points of light in the endless dark. I used to think the stars were indifferent. Now I think they're reminders that life is small, fragile, but not meaningless. The world is broken, but I am still here. And so are you if you're listening. That is enough. That is everything. I don't know what comes next. Maybe the raiders find me. Maybe the ground dries up completely. Maybe I walk north, chasing the whispers again, and maybe this time they lead to more than ruin. Or maybe they don't. But I'll keep walking. I'll keep hoping. Because hope isn't a luxury anymore, it's a weapon. And I intend to wield it until my last breath. This is not the end, not for me, not for us. The storm passed. The world didn't reset, but neither did it erase me. And as long as even one spark remains, we can still start a fire. The radio hums low, the old static wrapping around my voice like a blanket of ghosts. It's almost comforting now. The hiss and crackle, like the world itself, is whispering in my ear. Sometimes I wonder if that's all we are anymore. Static bouncing off the bones of dead satellites, carried by wires that lead nowhere. Just echoes, but not tonight. Tonight I want these words to mean something. Maybe not forever. Forever is too big, too far away. No, just for now. Just long enough to remind someone out there that they're not alone. The storm is over, or at least the worst of it. The air is heavy, thick with the smell of dust and ozone, but the sky has stopped tearing itself apart. The ground is still wet in patches where the rain came down like poison, hissing against metal, but it didn't take me. Not yet. I'm still here, breathing, speaking. That's the victory, isn't it? Not thriving, not conquering. Just existing when the world says you shouldn't. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. Maybe the river really does come back, swollen with the kind of water you can drink without it burning holes in your gut. Maybe the people who took shelter in the tunnels will climb out, their faces pale but alive, blinking against the broken sun. Maybe I'll hear another voice on this radio, clear, strong, human. Or maybe tomorrow is worse. Maybe tomorrow the air finishes what today couldn't. Maybe the earth cracks a little wider, swallowing the road I've walked so many times I could trace it blindfolded. Maybe tomorrow I don't wake up at all. But tonight I'm here, and that means something. You know, when this all started, back when the lights first went out, when the sky turned sick and the cities fell, I thought survival was about strength, about grit, about being tougher than whatever was clawing at the gates. But I've learned something different. Survival is about stubbornness, about looking at a dead world and saying, no, you don't get to take me yet. It's about carrying the weight of silence on your back, every hour of every day, and still finding a reason to whisper into it. And maybe it's about hope too. Not the big, cinematic kind. Not the hope that everything goes back to how it was. That's gone, burned away with the old world. No, I'm talking about the kind of hope that fits in the palm of your hand. A single seed, a warm fire on a cold night, a voice crackling across the airwaves, reminding you that somewhere out there, someone else is alive. That's the kind of hope worth keeping. The storm carved a scar across the horizon, black and jagged, and it'll be there long after I'm gone. But standing at the edge of it, I realize something. Even scars mean you've survived. They mean you're still here, carrying the story of what you've endured. The world has scars now. Maybe we do too. Maybe that's the proof we need, that we've lasted this long and we can last a little longer. So, what do I say to you, whoever you are, wherever you're listening? Stay alive. Not because tomorrow promises anything better, but because tomorrow exists at all. And sometimes that's enough. Stay human. Even when it feels easier to stop caring, to shut yourself off. Keep feeling. Keep remembering. Because the world can take the rest of it. Our homes, our cities, our sky. But if we stop being human, then it wins. And fight in your own way. Fight by waking up one more morning. Fight by lighting a candle against the dark. Fight by planting something in the soil, even if you don't know if it'll grow. Fight by telling a story so the silence doesn't eat everything. The world is quieter now. Too quiet. But if enough of us keep speaking, keep whispering into the static, maybe it won't stay quiet forever. I think about the ones I've lost. Friends, family, people whose names I'll never know. They didn't get this far. The storm took them, or the hunger, or the silence. And it hurts to carry that weight. It'll always hurt. But maybe living, just the act of living, is how we honor them. We walk for the ones who can't. We breathe for the ones who didn't. We keep going for the ones who stopped. So here's my truth. I don't know if the world can heal. I don't know if the rivers will run clean again, if the sky will clear, if the earth will ever stop groaning under the weight of what we did to it. But I do know this. Life finds cracks to grow in. It always has. It always will. Maybe we're those cracks now. Maybe we're the stubborn green pushing through the ruins. And if you're out there listening, if my voice has made it past the dust and the distance and the static, remember this. You're not alone. Not tonight. Not while I'm still here, talking into the dark. Not while there's still breath in my lungs and a heartbeat in my chest and a reason to keep pressing this transmitter down. The world may be gone, but we are not. And as long as we're still breathing, there's a chance. A small one, fragile as glass, but real. So hold on to it. I'll be here tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that until the static takes me too. This is my final message tonight. Stay alive. Stay human. Stay hopeful, even at the end of the world.